Alrighty everyone, welcome back to Wilds. This has been a video that I've wanted to make for quite a while, but never really could define it properly. I'm personally not a big fan of such qualifiers like advanced or hidden, because if you've spent over 700 hours on a weapon like I have, you start to lose track of what's common knowledge and what would be a little bit more difficult for someone to perform or discover by themselves. So today I compiled 3 major advanced air quotes strats for you to try next time you hunt with lance. Hopefully you find something new here, or at least something worth doing more often if you're already an advanced lancer. For this guide, I'll have to assume you know the basics of lance, for which there are many guides out there that still work just fine, and that you're at least aware of the combos that we normally use, which you can find in the most recent title update videos we've made for the channel. If you have any questions about that, you can still ask in the comments below, and I'll be sure to answer. But with all that being said, let's get started. So to begin, let's answer the why of these strats existing. All pieces of tech that I'm going to show you today revolve entirely on maintaining the identity that Lance has had since World Iceborne, essentially, and that is flexibility. And though that identity has somewhat been shaky in Wilds because of a vast array of different design choices that we don't need to get into in this video, there are still many things we can do to maintain it. The way Lance's flexibility manifests itself most clearly, in my humble opinion, is sticking to the monster at all times, a core feature of the weapon that was thankfully helped in the autumn patch of last year. Leaping thrust from neutral, that is the Y plus B input, had its magnetism buffed and costs no stamina, which is why it's the premier choice for closing relatively small gaps without losing max might. The dash attack, on the other hand, does lose stamina, but we gain finishing twin thrust as a recompense, and should you overshoot your target, the reverse attack is still pretty decent. But what if the monster is too far away for a leaping and too close for a dash, all the while it's attacking you? Well, we'll answer that shortly, but while we're here, we can also answer the how. The tech that I'll show you involves our most powerful moves: power guard, wide sweep, perfect guard, and charge counter. If you're not always doing or actively working towards these moves, you're leaving a substantial amount of damage on the table. The charge levels can be an entire video in and of themselves, but what enables our tech to work is the fact that they're linked to these moves either before or after. So now we can get into the interesting stuff. Our first bit of tech has to do with Lance's focus strike, victory thrust. I could tell you that you should cancel it early 9 times out of 10 and all that jazz, but beyond that, it's important to manipulate its hitbox and magnetism, because you don't need me to tell you how important wounds are in Wilds. Unlike practically any other focus strike in the game, Victory Thrust has a spherical hitbox or close to it. That means that you can actually pop wounds to your sides or even directly behind you without impacting them. This is important because of the other implication of such a hitbox. Any part of the monster that impacts your sphere first will absorb the hit most likely, denying you the wound. An extension of this tech is what I call wound reaching, where you extend your Victory Thrust's hitbox as much as possible with unorthodox aiming. This allows you to hit wounds that would otherwise be unreachable, and the range you gain might depend on individual monsters and the distance to them, but it's hardly a science. There's a lot of feeling to it, and I'm not perfect at even replicating it in a controlled environment like the training area, but when it comes to wounds, every little bit helps. To explain the next piece of tech, we first need to talk about how absurd charge counter is as a move. It lets you counter practically every attack in the game, except for guaranteed deaths like Zoshia, Omega, and Gogmazios. This includes command grabs, unblockables, every physical hit, every projectile attack, and even lesser supernovae like Jindahads. It's not an offset, it's not a block, and it's not a dodge. Only Capcom really knows what it is, and I'm glad it exists, but it has 2 critical issues. Firstly, it can't counter staggered hitboxes, as it only has iframes for a brief period during its animation. This means that moves like Gore's multi-hit fireballs can be charge countered, but not Uthuna's belly flop and subsequent wave. And secondly, it can't counter active hitboxes. In Wilds and many other games, when you block an attack, its hitbox will deactivate. But since the charge counter doesn't count as a block, and you technically haven't been hit yet, the hitbox remains active throughout the entire animation. In these cases, you have to guard instantly out of a charge counter to avoid taking damage. But now what if we combine unblockables with active hitboxes? This is where it gets extremely obnoxious for Lance to counter without investing in guard up and sacrificing a valuable damage skill. Needless to say, this is undesirable, and though thankfully these moves are rare for now, their prevalence on the hardest monsters sets a bad precedent for the weapon going forward. So now we can talk about what I call forward assist. If you perform a charge counter looking forward and release it, your hunter won't move much. But if you perform a charge counter and say turn your camera 90 degrees to the side while releasing it, you'll find them traveling a surprising distance. This is perhaps the most subtle piece of tech in this list, but allows you to avoid lingering hitboxes that would otherwise punish you for using a charge counter, as we just discussed. A good example of this is the AT redoubt fight, where you can still joust it, but only if you employ forward assist to avoid its lingering lightning trails. So now that we know about forward assist, I want you to try something a little bit different. Looking forward with your focus mode, release it, and perform a charge counter while holding down on your left stick. This will cause your hunter to turn around. But this is the basis for our next trick, which is reverse backstep. So reverse backstepping, or some might call it the GRT jump tech, is the final form of forward assist, all in service of sticking to the monster's face. Repeating the same steps as previously mentioned, only that instead of releasing the charge counter, you now input a power guard while looking backwards. Power guard in this game is coded to knock you back opposite the direction you're facing. Luckily for us, that's now towards the monster. Once you do get hit, you can input a grand retribution thrust to backstep again towards the monster, and finally re-engage your focus mode to hit it with the follow-up. We're combining the distance traveled by forward assist, the knockback from the red charge power guard, the backstep from the grand retribution thrust, and the lunge from the retribution thrust itself. Excluding a prolonged dash attack, this is the most distance that you can cover with a lance while attacking. And many monster moves are unpunishable if you don't employ this tech. Finally, as a little bonus, I wanted to show what I call the sidestep retribution, which is far from a good piece of tech. It doesn't do much in most cases, but it's something you can visibly pull off if you wanted to, which again, I don't know why you would. There are actually a few matchups out of a power clash. You might be left too far away to connect the retribution thrust, but the timing for this is incredibly awkward to say the least. Regardless, for completion's sake, I'm including it in the video. And that's it. Those are the 3 most important pieces of advanced tech for Lance that we use on the daily as of title update 4. I hope you found something new here or useful enough to do more often in your hunts. If you have any questions, do let me know. Stay tuned for more. And as always, take care and have a good one.